We are going to move the agenda around a little bit. We're going to start next with research and problem gambling, item 6, and we will go directly to Mark Van der Linden.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chairman, Commissioners. Hi. So I have several items on the agenda today. I wanted to kick it off in talking about National Problem Gambling Awareness Month. March is National Problem Gambling Awareness Month. So National Problem Gambling Awareness Month is a grassroots public awareness and outreach campaign to educate the general public and healthcare professionals about the warning signs of problem gambling and raise awareness about the help that's available both locally as well as nationally. We at the Commission are paying attention, I think, with laser focus on what's happening with our licensed gaming establishments and the application process to get to that point. We know well that the prevalence of gambling is woven into our everyday life, whether it be football, whether it be lottery, whether it be bingo parlors, whatever it may be. In fact, the phrase "I bet you" is used so commonly we don't even think about using it. I bet you I've used it today. Gambling occasionally is fun for most, but for 6 to 8 million Americans, it is truly a problem. And when I say a problem for these Americans, what I mean is that they're in financial ruins. It's devastating. The mental and physical health issues that accompany it are profound. It ruins relationships. Domestic violence is commonly associated with it. Work issues, including productivity, fraudulent and illegal practices, frequent absences are very common. The dark side of that. On the light side, I want to focus on what's happening in Massachusetts and some of the rich resources that we have here. Bottom line is Massachusetts is incredibly fortunate in what we have. It has committed and talented clinicians to provide treatment and support to persons and their families who suffer from this disorder. It has the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling. They have a brilliant and talented staff who work tirelessly to provide prevention, helpline, training, and other resources, and more. It's home to some of the world's top researchers, one of whom you're going to hear from today, Dr. LaPlante, and Dr. Howard Schaefer from Division on Addiction at the Cambridge Health Alliance. It has Dr. Rachel Volberg, Dr. Ed Stanek from our Sigma research team at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And it has the Expanded Gaming Act that is taking groundbreaking steps to enshrine research in what we do and its mandate to providing funding for treatment, prevention, and education. One of the innovative programs that's being aligned with National Problem Gambling Awareness Month is originating right here in the Boston area through the Cambridge Health Alliance and Dr. Debbie LaPlante, who works for Division on Addiction at the Cambridge Health Alliance. And I invited her here today to talk a little bit about that initiative. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Okay. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Commissioners, for inviting me to this meeting today. Like many other organizations in Massachusetts, the Division on Addiction, where I work, is preparing for gambling expansion in a variety of ways. The division is developing a program of research, education, and outreach activities that we're organizing under the title CHARGE, or the Cambridge Health Alliance Readiness for Gambling Expansion Initiative. Some of these activities include developing a seminar to train Cambridge Health Alliance outpatient addiction services providers about gambling, participating in educational events such as the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling Research Luncheons and their annual conference, integrating a gambling theme into our own continuing medical education conference in October called Addiction Medicine, preparing manuscripts about gambling in Massachusetts for publication in peer-reviewed journals, promoting subscription to our free weekly research review that includes access to The Wager, a review of gambling-related academic studies, continuing plans to participate in research in related activities in Massachusetts, and creating public health events that will help people who struggle with gambling-related problems. As Mark mentioned, March is National Problem Gambling Awareness Month. And during this month, the division and many other interested key stakeholders around the country are promoting awareness and education programs to help people understand and identify gambling-related problems. One of the primary events that we are promoting is Gambling Disorder Screening Day on March 11th, 2014. We decided to promote brief screening because it is an extremely valuable public health tool that simultaneously can make a positive public health impact through identifying people who might be struggling with gambling-related problems, and can create awareness among providers that might have limited experience with this issue. Gambling disorder is a low base rate disorder in the general population, but meaningful numbers of treatment seekers of all kinds have this problem. For example, research suggests that as much as 10% of primary care patients report lifetime gambling disorder. Unfortunately, treatment for gambling disorder is limited, and this might be due to cases of gambling disorder going undetected. Gambling Disorder Screening Day is an opportunity to change this situation. To promote Gambling Disorder Screening Day, we created a Gambling Disorder Screening Material Toolkit and launched a grassroots campaign to recruit supporters and participating organizations that will complete gambling screening on March 11th. Our screening toolkit materials are freely available on our website, and the materials include easy-to-read, hopefully, descriptions of, first, what is gambling disorder? And this document defines gambling, the DSM-5 criteria for gambling disorder, and common consequences of gambling disorder. Second, we have a document that we called Why Screen for Gambling Disorder? And this document provides information about the need for more screening, key stakeholders who might consider adding screening to their practice, and details about what to expect from a mental health screening. Third, we include the brief biosocial gambling screen itself. This document provides a brief 3-item screen, as well as the psychometric validation information associated with that screen. And fourth, we've prepared a list of local and national resources, and this document provides resources available from the division, as well as from agencies in Massachusetts and nationally. We've been extremely pleased with the way that people have received the idea of a Gambling Disorder Screening Day. And several organizations across the country and beyond have worked to promote March 11th as Gambling Disorder Screening Day. These organizations include the National Center on Problem Gambling, the National Center for Responsible Gaming, the International Gaming Institute, the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling, the SICUN Institute on Tribal Gaming, EAP companies KGA Incorporated, and All One Health, the Association of Problem Gambling Service Administrators, and the Institute for Community Health. Likewise, the division has been working with several treatment provider groups to help them host their own screening events. And these groups include St. Francis House, the North Charles Institute, Duffy Health Center, the Healing Lodge of the Seven Nations, the Dunes East Hampton, the VA Boston Healthcare System, Advocates Incorporated, and the Behavioral Health Network. In addition, the Mass Council on Compulsive Gambling will be hosting screening events at Plainville and Suffolk during March. So we hope that word will continue to get out and more people and groups will join in on screening on March 11th. We picked this date to repeat because March is National Problem Gambling Awareness Month, and brief screening for gambling disorder is an essential part of increasing awareness and helping people who have gambling problems. Thank you.
Great. The link you talked about where you had your, something called the wager, you said that's a free, maybe somebody could send that around to us. Just be interested to have that, access to that.
Absolutely. It's a free weekly research review, and we have a subscription service, so if you want to receive that directly by email, you can do that.
Okay, great.
Great.
Is there anything else, anything we can do to be supportive of?
Well, I think that being able to announce it here is a great show of support, and you know, promoting it through, you've been using Twitter and other social media, putting it up on your calendar. Those are great ways to get the word out, to try to get as many people interested in screening as possible, not just on March 11th, but beyond.
Yeah. Well, we can certainly use our media. We have been. Okay, great.
We can mention it, we'll all be here on March 11th, and as with you, with
Correct.
Keith White. We can mention it again that day.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a great idea.
Oh, good point.
Yeah,
For the Internet Gaming Forum.
Yeah,
right,
good point.
right.
Okay.
I had a question. Dr. LaPlante, how do you encourage people, I mean, unlike a medical screen, let's say, how do all these professionals, I see the groups that, you know, can be involved with the screening, how do you encourage people to be screened? Is there,
The actual potential patients?
Yes.
I think that there are a lot of different ways, and you can go at it. So, for example, the Mass Council is setting up like a booth almost, where they're there to provide information and screening for people, who might approach them. They're not necessarily approaching patients, but providers could actually just, go at it pretty straight and say, National Problem Gambling Awareness Month is during March, and we know that a lot of people who are treatment seekers for a variety of different reasons struggle with gambling problems. So today I want to ask you 3 questions. Here's what they are. And just, go into it fairly straightly and be upfront about what the issue is and why you're doing it.
Thank you.
Sounds like a great plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, in terms of the question of what can we as a commission do, and I think that's great. We always need to be asking ourselves what can we possibly do to make sure that this issue stays at the forefront of the conversation about gaming, to make sure that we're constantly trying to improve the efforts that we do. And I want to recognize the commission. I want to recognize the statute for putting this at the forefront. It really is unique, and it's such a honor to be a part of the commission, to be able to have this role within the commission, and seeing how it is woven into the work that we do. So,
Right.
Thank you both.
Thank you both very much. Thank you.
okay, that's great. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.
Next, I was going to talk about the responsible gaming framework. And I've invited Marlene Warner. She's the executive director of the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling to join me, since she has been integral in the creation of this framework along the way. So the responsible gaming framework. Something that I've spoken with each of you individually about. The framework was designed to provide structure for responsible gaming practices of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission licensees. It's based on a commitment by the Commission to mitigate, to the best of our ability, gambling-related harm. This is a process, this framework that you have before you began, officially kicked off on October 28th of last year when we had the Responsible Gaming Forum. At that time, we invited a number of accomplished persons in the field to come and give us their thoughts, their experience, their expertise on a number of different areas that would be considered responsible gaming best practices. Just like I mentioned earlier, fortunately, we didn't have to look too far because a lot of those individuals are right here within Massachusetts. Dr. Debbie LaPlante was a part of it. Marlene Warner was part of it, Dr. Natasha Dow-Scholl, Dr. Rachel Volberg, Dr. Howard Schaefer, all of whom are experts that we have here and have been incredibly helpful along the way. I appreciate their assistance in this immensely. We also had Keith White, Executive Director of the National Council on Problem Gambling, Mr. David O. Schwartz from the American Gaming Association, Dr. Leah Nauer from Rutgers University, and their Center for Gambling Studies. So each of these individuals, and you are all there, provided some very good information for us to consider as we developed this responsible gaming framework. Following that day, I worked with Dr. Jeff Murata of Problem Gambling Solutions, as well as Marlene Warner and Breanne Tolson from the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling to begin drafting a framework. Our goal was to integrate the information from these experts, as well as take a look at what are the best practices from around the world. We took a look at a number of different frameworks that are in existence in other jurisdictions. We took a look at what are the best practices, what is the research telling us in terms of what are the responsible gaming practices that we should consider. Page 16 of the framework outlines the host of various resources that we drew on. I would say it was an incredible process of trying to pick and choose, and at the end, it's trying to pick and choose those practices that seem to be the most promising and that at the same time seem to align with what the priorities of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission are, which is the product that you have in front of you.
And a credit to you for having date and version on this.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? That version is going to be changing, I have a feeling.
That's the point of putting it on, yeah.
So this is created in light and in recognition that regulation alone will not create an environment where responsible gaming is integrated throughout and at every level of a gaming establishment. We recognize that this is a shared commitment. It's a shared commitment by our licensees. It's a shared commitment by the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and other key and very important stakeholders. At the top of my list would be the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling, our Sigma research team, the research teams, the other vested stakeholders that are out there, and through Massachusetts. And so our goal is to create a sustainable and socially responsible and accountable approach to gambling in Massachusetts. I want the responsible gaming framework to be that sort of guiding light in this. It's not just through regulation, but it's a shared commitment to making sure that this happens. Some of it's through regulation, some of it's through practices, some of it's through philosophy, but I think that we can work together, all of these different stakeholders, with our licensees right there, providing the gaming opportunities to make sure that we do this right. My goal is to get as much feedback from commissioners and make sure that we have an opportunity to get it out to our applicants as well as our one licensee at this point. And that's where I've asked Marlene's help in that as well as general public, to make sure that we get buy-in on this. That's the other piece, right? Is that we can put this framework out there. But in order, if we want to do more than just regulation, if we want to get buy-in at every level of this, or if we want to see people adhere to it, companies adhere to it, we got to get buy-in from their level from within. So, Marlene, maybe you would talk about where we would bring this with a partnership.
Sure. So, good afternoon. I think most of you know that we work closely with the Mass Partnership on Responsible Gambling. And one of the things that we've done is really try to walk them through every step of the way where the thought process was and where some of the drafting of this is, but they haven't really been privy to the information included. They all did attend the October forum. I think the next piece is to really kind of get their feedback. Are these realistic tactics that have been put forth? And what have we overlooked? I think there's a lot of conversations that has taken place as we've been drafting this document as to what is realistic and what's going to be useful to the players, both who currently may have a problem or may be high risk for a problem, but also folks who are walking the door without having any prior issues, and what's going to keep them safe. What is going to keep this fun and entertaining and not have them cross over the line? So it's good to get the feedback from those individuals, and we'll be doing that in a very short time period is my sense.
Yeah. So, and also, again, any feedback, I guess I would turn it over to you for questions, comments, discussion.
So the next step, obviously you want to hear from us, but you will get this out to the applicants and look to see what their feedback is. I know, Mark, in speaking with you yesterday, I asked you about what's controversial, what is, where will you receive some pushback? And I'm trying to think of one, you talked about one area that you thought, what was,
Yeah,
there would be some pushback.
Player reward cards,
Yes,
and how
that's
those, what is considered mandatory and what is considered optional with player reward cards. It was our approach to take what we thought was the best practices and put in responsible gaming and put them in there, and to the best of our ability, and that's where it gets kind of great, to the best of our ability, make sure that it aligns with what the climate, the culture, the mission, the philosophy of Massachusetts and the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. And that's where the discussion, I think, really comes in. Where do we want to land on a number of these different issues to make sure that we're doing it right, we're doing it thoughtfully, but that it fits with where we're going as a commission, as a state.
Marlene, remind us who integrate the mass partnership on responsible gambling? I
Currently-
know some are racing applicants, racing licensees, but there's other parties.
Yeah, so currently the Mass Partnership on Responsible Gambling is made up of all applicants. All of your applicants are part of that group right now. The Mass State Lottery is part of that. And depending on kind of the meeting, there's some other community-based or statewide organizations who are part of that. But the primary bulk of the group are the applicants. So again, it would be very helpful to get their feedback on this.
Mark, I haven't had a chance to read this, so I can't react yet, but I certainly will. But can you just sort of characterize this? Is this similar to other quality jurisdictions, or is this groundbreaking in terms of what was pulled together? How does this sort of stack up against other jurisdiction standards?
Yeah, you know, in the United States, I don't know of another state that has gaming, that has put together a responsible gaming framework, and certainly not in advance of the gaming operations opening up. The inspiration that we had, that this came primarily from other international jurisdictions. The one that sticks out in my mind, the one that I think both Marlene and I, Dr. Murata, had said this is really good, would be from Queensland.
Queensland.
Yes, we felt that they did a fantastic job of outlining that. We drew a lot of information from that. But then we didn't stop there. We also wanted to take a look at, individually, what are some of the best practices. And so we another very important document to us was Dr. Rob Williams pulled together a lot of information about problem gambling prevention, responsible gaming, best practices into one document. And as you know, Dr. Rob Williams is one of our principal investigators, and he did a fantastic job. We also took a look at what the American Gaming Association, trying to figure out what is happening within the United States, and where other states falling. It's great to look at international jurisdictions and say this is really inspiring, but that's not what's happening in the United States. We want to try to tie this together, and this comes back to making sure that we're listening to kind of what the climate is here. So we took a look at responsible gaming regulation documents that the AGA had pulled together as well. So it's a whole host of documents, but
Also
certainly
some-
Queensland was
I was also going to just say, and with a fair reliance as well on some of the documents coming out of Ontario. So I think that, and made some reference to that as well within here.
yeah.
You might tell the other commissioners besides Commissioner Zuniga and I, about Rachel's feedback from when she was in New Zealand or wherever it was.
Yeah, so Dr. Rachel Volberg had just recently returned from a conference and an international think tank by invitation only in Australia. And some of the feedback she got is that what's happening here in Massachusetts is truly some of the best news that's come from the United States in a very, very long time. The efforts that we're putting forth are pretty unprecedented in the United States. It's been my experience as well. It's that I have not seen anything quite as exciting, where you align research, you align services, and you align regulation together in such a way that we are doing meaningful work here. And that's really what the message was from the think tank. And there was a lot of interest internationally on what's happening in Massachusetts.
Great.
Great. So do you want comments today, or should we wait until we do it? Should we send them to you by email, or drop in for a chat, or?
All,
All of the
Lunch or-
above.
Pony Express.
so I would welcome any feedback, any discussion that you would feel today. I would welcome any of the above of what you have just mentioned, as well as putting it out for public comment,
Yeah.
focusing, and maybe Marlene, and I would be glad to join you for the Partnership on Responsible Gaming group. But again, if we really want there to be buy-in on this, and it rises above just a level of simple regulation, then we want to get the buy-in and investment and feedback from as many people as want to provide that. So I would say if we put it out for a period of public input through our website, through these different avenues, and then any feedback that I could gather from commissioners during that period would be great.
Great,
And we could perhaps bring it back in a month or so.
all right.
I look forward to all of that, but I will mention that the process that has led you to this point with the parties that you've involved and you know, how you've gone about doing this is great. It's remarkable, and it's, you know, very inclusive, very thoughtful. I think, you know, I think there's a lot of great product here. We can talk about some of the nuances at a later time, but overall, I think it's just outstanding.
Okay. Thank you very much.
The idea, I join that, the idea of an overall framework that guides thinking and regulatory promulgation sets a tone for a culture that ultimately supports the kind of measures that we want. I mean, there's always going to be gaps, but if the culture is aligned with the outcome, that's really good. And I think this kind of an approach helps to do that. So I think it's great too.
Great work, Art
Thank you.
and Marlene.
So you'll be back, you're gonna put this out now. And again, we'll do it with all of our media as well as whatever you all are talking to. And then, so you'll target a time to come back to us we'll go through this pretty much point by point. And
Yes.
then individually, commissioners can talk to you in the meantime.
Okay.
Great.
Great.
Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Marlene will be joining us our next meeting as well to kind of continue our emphasis on National Problem Gambling Awareness Month. So.
Great.
I look forward to it. Thank
Great.
you.
Good. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Council Grossman, would you like to join me? Nick, the next item that deals with problem gambling, responsible gambling, is looking at look at our voluntary self-exclusion regulations.
You can go ahead.
Okay. So we presented this in its first draft to the commission in January. We put this out to public feedback in January. That closed on February 14th. During that feedback period, we received comments and suggestions from a number of different entities. I'd like to just tell you who that was real quick. From Mohegan Sun, or on behalf of Mohegan Sun, Kevin Conroy, Gaming Laboratories International, Kevin Mullally, MGM, Martin Natasia, from Rutgers University Center for Gambling Studies, Dr. Leah Nauer, from the National Center for Responsible Gaming, Christine Riley, from the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling, Kathleen Scallion, from the Cambridge Health Alliance Division on Addiction, Dr. Howard Schaefer, from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, our Sigma team, Dr. Rachel Volberg, from University of Lethbridge, also on our Sigma team, Dr. Rob Williams. All very, very good feedback. And Todd and I went over that pretty thoroughly. And it gave us an opportunity to think a lot about how we structure this. And I would also like to say that it was also based on feedback from our commissioners. So my thought would be that we would kind of go through what the changes were from what the version was that we presented in January, if that's agreeable to you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Okay. Some of the feedback that we got really focused on and we got this feedback and from you as well, is the needing to recognize or acknowledge that you're a problem gambler in order to sign up for the list. It's something that's mentioned within the statute. We were trying to align with that, but that created some concern about it may alienate some individuals that don't necessarily feel that they are a problem gambler by the definition that we had provided, but at the same time want to be placed on the list. And so within 133.01, we added some language in there that about midway through that first paragraph, placement of one's name on the voluntary self-exclusion list is intended to offer individuals one means to help address problem gambling behavior or deter an individual with family, religious, or other personal concerns from entering a gaming area of a gaming establishment. We also went on then and said, for the purposes of 205 CMR 133, the term problem gambler shall mean an individual who believes their gambling behavior is currently or may in the future without intervention cause problems in their life or on the lives of their family, friends, and or coworkers. Okay. There was also a question, should I just keep moving through with the changes? Okay, there was also a question about, so where does the self-exclusion apply? Is it for the entire gaming establishment, or is it just simply specifically for the gaming area where gambling is taking place? And in consideration of the nature of the gaming establishments that we will have, the number of amenities that will be offered, we thought that it would be best to designate it as the gaming area by which an individual on the self-exclusion list would be prohibited from going and from gambling. And so the next piece down, for the purposes of 205 CMR 133, the term gaming area shall mean the portion of the premise of a gaming establishment in which or on which gaming is conducted. And that definition was pulled from the statute.
Now, that's consistent, is it, with standard or best practices? You can get close, but you can't get there.
Correct. Without looking at it, I know that it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, that there are states where they limit it to the gaming area. Some say the entire gaming establishment.
But you're satisfied that this is not too tempting?
I recognize that for some individuals that will be tempting. I recognize that in terms of removing as many barriers as we can or deterrence reasons why people would not want to sign up for the self-exclusion list, that seemed to outweigh that factor. The perfect examples would be that a number of our gaming establishments will offer concerts, social events, restaurants, a number of different opportunities that if we said it's the entire gaming establishment, they would be prohibited from going there. Would that create a barrier for some people to say, I'm not willing to agree to that?
Right.
I think so.
Right, okay.
On that note, what about racing? How does, now we have a licensee that will have both gaming and racing.
Mm-hmm. So it would apply to the gaming area of a racing, of the racetrack as well.
Of the racetrack as well.
Yeah.
What is the gaming area of a racetrack?
I would assume it's the area in which you can place, as it would fit within the definition, the area in which a wager can be placed. In fact, I think that's...
Where is that?
It's at the beginning. Gaming area is defined in the first, in 133.01.
Which page are you on? Very first page?
First page. It says scope and purpose at the end.
Yeah.
And so any area at a racetrack in which that would apply would be the area that we would consider would be off limits.
Well,
Director
but
Durenberger may have a point to make here.
it's,
Thank you. I just want to point out that we had looked initially at, this was one of the issues that we thought about last fall, was what was gaming and what was racing establishment. And I can tell you that in one jurisdiction where I worked, the parimutuel area was actually separated from the gaming area by a glass enclosure. Part of that was because of the different age requirements to be in the parimutuel versus the gaming establishment, but that we had on the racing commission side excluded certain patrons. And I don't know if it was by house rule or by regulation, but those patrons could go into the gaming area in one of the jurisdictions I worked at, and in one they couldn't. Now, that wasn't self-exclusion, but it is an example of the difficulties of trying to manage both within the same premise. So we're happy to be consistent with whatever is, you know, whichever way the commission moves forward, we intend to be consistent with it and work with Director Van der Linden on making sure that there's no conflict.
if we just leave it as gaming, that's not going to keep people away from the parimutuel, right?
That's a good question.
Gaming isn't gaming defined
It
as
is.
something different from the parimutuel? Yeah.
We'd have to look.
Well, Jennifer was just using the word separately, right?
We can,
No, I'm talking about our statute. Our statute has a definition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which in her language, her use of the language was reinforcing it.
Right.
ultimately, I think it's up to the commission to consider whether it wants to include the racing element or not. And that brings us kind of back to the beginning of the conversation, which is whether these regulations, in your judgment, should incorporate the entire gaming establishment or just the gaming area. The statute, Chapter 23K, Section 45, which governs this topic generally, provides that the commission shall establish a list of self-excluded persons from gaming establishments. What we have determined, and based upon our expert input and judgment, that this list should really only apply to the gaming areas of the gaming establishment. And what I would submit is that that is not inconsistent with what the statute says. But ultimately, I think it's up to the commission to determine what portion of the gaming establishment, which in the case of our present licensee would likely include the track and all of the parimutuel areas, whether we want to de facto include the entire gaming establishment within the scope of these regulations or just the gaming areas.
Well, it doesn't have to be all or, it doesn't have to be either or, does it? Couldn't you say the gaming, portion of the premises of a gaming establishment on which gaming or parimutuel wagering is conducted? Then the person could go watch the horses if she
I
wanted
think
to,
that's right.
but not bet. I don't know whether that would work.
Yeah, so there would be a designated area within the racing facility where somebody could not cross. There needs to be a boundary on this. If we're going to say
Yeah.
it's something more limited than the gaming establishment, there needs to be boundaries on this that we could say you're in the gaming area or you're not in the gaming area. And so, Director Durenberger, I don't know if you have a comment on that.
There is some precedent for that, so I think that language gets you at least in the right direction in terms of the area where parimutuel wagering is permitted. So for example, one jurisdiction I worked in, our receptionist in the racing office, the number one question that she got when the public called was, I want to bring my kids out to the race, where can we go? And there's an answer for that. The answer is the apron, the public facilities. Oftentimes racetracks have playgrounds for exactly that reason. And so there are definitely designated areas. There is precedent for that. So we can certainly take a look at how other jurisdictions handle that.
But then there are some racetracks where to get into the public seating area, you walk through areas where parimutuel wagering is going on, right?
So maybe you get the carpet scheme.
the different colored carpeting.
Yeah.
They do that in Pennsylvania.
Do they?
Yes,
Huh.
because they share some facilities, but the age is different in gaming and racing, so they colored the carpet, and, you know, minors under 18 are not allowed on that blue carpeting, they're only on the red.
So there is a solution.
Yeah, I think certainly we're not the first jurisdiction to
Right.
face this issue. There are many
Right.
have come before
Right.
us, and there is
Right,
an
right,
answer
right.
out there, and we can look at
Right.
different approaches.
I just,
Okay.
I only raise it just because I think it still needs to be thought through and articulated. That's, I'm sure it could be done, but it hasn't been yet, that's all.
So,
Okay.
but we need to make a decision as to whether we want an exclusion to keep people out of the pari-mutuel as well as the gaming areas, right?
Correct,
I mean,
yeah.
that's a policy decision the commission has to make.
Yes.
But I would love to see the research on who does what and what the best practices are in racing. That would be
Okay.
helpful to inform the decision.
Right.
Okay.
One of the questions we early on kept running into is creating the self-exclusion process and where you actually physically go to sign up. Is I'm looking at the responsibility of the gaming licensees. Is there any requirement we want to place on them that a self-exclusion sign-up should be somewhere other than the middle of the gaming floor, for instance?
That actually is addressed in 133.02, designated agents, which is number 3.
Okay.
The application for, or is it, or 2, okay, I'm sorry. Number 2, an individual may request to have their name placed on the voluntary self-exclusion list by completing an application and procedures outlined in 205 CMR 133.02. Oh, I'm sorry.
That the application will be available at designated locations, where we're going to put it. I think ultimately, we leave it to the commission to establish the designated locations for the availability of the applications, and ultimately where the designated agents will be located as well, which would include the gaming establishments, but also other areas on and off the gaming establishment premises.
That was some feedback that we
Yeah,
got as
there
well
was
from external feedback, that there was some confusion, some concern that you could only go to one place. You could only go to the gaming establishment in order to sign up for the self-exclusion. So we've allowed for designated agents off of the gaming facility, not necessarily associated with the gaming establishment, to be designated agents to complete the application process.
From the site visits that we did, I found that some of the direction to either where commission employees will be for the purpose of adding themselves to a self-exclusion were really poorly marked.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something we need to bury ourselves in the weeds on, but you know, there was almost if you were trying to find the location of the gaming commission offices, you almost had to go up and ask somebody on the gaming floor as to where you had to go.
Yeah.
I just don't know if we want to be that directed in what we're asking the licensee to do, but some of the nuances, again, it's the really fine detail, but that was something I saw that.
Yeah, it comes back to what are the barriers that are stopping somebody who may want to sign up for the self-exclusion list to getting on that self-exclusion list, and that point of access and how easy it is to reach that point of access is a really important question. We have a requirement that there is the on-site counseling center, which through the responsible gaming framework, we indicate should be more centrally located, and that would be a great opportunity, location for self-exclusion process to happen.
Okay.
But any question that deals with removing barriers, I think is great.
Would this be a section in which you'd want to address, what's the word, reciprocity with other jurisdictions? Or do you?
We have a statement of reciprocity. It's right here.
Page 2.
Yeah. Okay. My version is slightly different than yours because I have markups, but it's number 8.
Page 2, bottom of page 2.
Oh, I see.
And this was also something that was added after our January meeting, when it came up of how do we allow for reciprocity.
Okay, that's something I think we might want to think about expanding. I haven't really focused on it, but.
You know, one of the challenges is that there aren't other jurisdictions where their regulations allow for it. So really, I think that as we develop this, we wanted to create a placeholder to allow for that once those partnerships kind of open up for us to do.
Right.
And so it's keeping in line with what's required in the statute, and I think it's keeping in line with a very good practice in this area.
And have you talked about or thought about the mechanical database? Who's going to hold this database? What kind of a database will it be? By whom is it accessible and so forth?
Right. It would be managed by us, by the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. We have the vendor that's working with licensing. There should be capacity within that database to hold this piece of it.
Okay.
But we would be the central organizing body of the self-exclusion list, and make sure that we receive those. We would verify the completeness of the applications. We would update it and send it back out to authorized agents at the licensed gaming establishments on a regular basis.
Is it available to the public and the press?
No. There is a statement in here that that is not open to that type of public records.
Okay.
There is allowance for it to be released to de-identified information to our research, for research purposes.
That would be a tremendous barrier to getting into the list.
Right.
If it was going to be posted somewhere.
I do like the fact that you came up with different levels of duration. And there are certainly sanctions we can take against the licensee should somebody on a self-exclude, should they violate one of their requirements. Is there any thought or any practice with respect to penalizing the individual for trying to essentially break their agreement?
If a person violates their self-exclusion agreement and they're caught on the gaming floor, they would lose any of the winnings, any of the anything that they would have won
Right.
at that time.
But do we impose any other type of, they don't get to collect their winnings
Or recover losses.
or recover losses.
Or recover losses.
Is there any additional penalty that other jurisdictions suggest or recommend or have used?
I've seen where they have, there's the ability to cite them for trespassing onto the gaming establishment because they have an agreement not to be there, so technically they're trespassing. We have not integrated that into our regulations.
To that end, if I may, and this came out of one of the comments we got from the list that Mark read earlier, and it was the person implored us to just remember the purpose that of this list, and it's not a license of any kind. And as we said in the introduction, it's a tool that the person themselves can use to help combat a problem or an issue that they're having. So we're not trying to really penalize people per se, as you would if they had a driver's license or even a gaming license and they did something wrong. We're trying to offer them some assistance to deal with these issues. So there are, I don't think, any penalties of the sort that you're referring to specifically for that reason.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree.
Making arrests for trespass does not seem like a way to handle this at all. But we would escort them out of the building, obviously.
Right.
Anything else?
I have I take it as on the shared drive at this point, because I have just a bunch of technical little things that I'd like to get to you. Don't need to deal with them now.
I'd just make one quick other legal point here. I hate to, get into all the legal stuff, but you may recall when this first came before you, we dealt with the issue of acknowledging that you were a problem gambler. And one of the areas I would direct your attention to is the expansion of that particular element here. And we have said that while you do, one of the ways that you can get yourself on the list is to acknowledge you're a problem gambler, there are other ways you can do it too. And that was born of a more expansive reading of what the statute says, and not to apply such a narrow approach to the requirement that you acknowledge that you're a problem gambler. I think what you'll start to see if you take a look at the comments we received and Mark's own comments and some of your own concerns, were that it doesn't necessarily make sense to require someone to come in and identify themselves as a problem gambler. There may be other reasons why they want to get on the list. So we've expanded these regulations to allow for individuals to identify as a problem gambler, or just acknowledge that they have some other gambling concerns, or they may have some other family or religious or other personal reasons why they want to be on the list. So these regulations would allow for that, and again, I would submit doing that is not inconsistent with what the statute talks about, even though it does specifically reference acknowledging that you are a problem gambler.
The statute says that, yeah, that's what we talked about the last time. The
It says
statute says to be on the exclusion list, you have to acknowledge that you're a problem gambler.
Specifically, it says a person may request such person's name to be placed on the list of excluded persons by filing a statement with the commission acknowledging that the person is a problem gambler and by agreeing to a number of other things. So as you consider what I just said, the reading I think you would have to apply to it, which is, again, a broader reading than perhaps what you may think this says on its face, is to focus on the fact that it says a person may place their name by acknowledging that they're a problem gambler. The reading I would apply to it would be to suggest that there are other ways you can do it too. So I thought it was important, and we agreed, that we couldn't disregard that in its entirety and not require that someone acknowledge something, that there's some reason why they're adding their name to the list. And that one of the ways they could do it is by acknowledging they're a problem gambler, but they could also do it by acknowledging something else. And that's why we kept that section in the regulations and didn't remove it altogether because of its placement in the statute.
Okay. And this is where in the process now? These are out for public?
They're back from, we've received the public comment. The public comment as it was appropriate has been integrated into the regulations.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, so these have been out for informal public comment, so at this point it would be, we're here for a vote from the commission to approve us to start the formal process.
Okay. Any further discussion before we have a vote? Somebody want to frame it?
Yep, I move that we accept this draft of the voluntary self-exclusion list with whatever technical changes may be requested.
By Commissioner McHugh.
Well, I wasn't going to be that specific. Yeah, just
Period. Right.
period, yes.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
Good work, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, the final agenda item that I have today is an update on the research activities. Okay. I want to provide some context leading up to a description of where we're at. So if I could provide a brief statement about that. So Section 71 of the Gaming Act requires the Massachusetts Gaming Commission to establish an annual research agenda with 3 distinct and essential elements. First, to understand what are the social and economic effects of expanded gambling. Second, implementing a baseline study of problem gambling and the existing prevention and treatment programs that address the harmful consequences of gambling. And finally, obtaining scientific information relative to the neuroscience, psychology, sociology, epidemiology, and etiology of gambling. 1 year ago, I would like to recognize that this is a milestone of our 1-year effort in this area. So in March of 2013, the Massachusetts Gaming Commission announced that the UMass Amherst team had been selected to carry out the first step of the research agenda. The project, titled The Social and Economic Impacts of Gambling in Massachusetts, or SIGMA for short, was awarded the contract. The SIGMA team is comprised of several experts in research in the gambling studies field. So these include Dr. Rachel Volberg, who is one of our principal investigators, Dr. Edward Stanek, a co-principal investigator, also from UMass Amherst, Dr. Robert Williams from the University of Lethbridge and research coordinator for the Alberta Gambling Research Institute, Daniel Hodge, he's our economic impacts lead, and he is the director of economic and public policy research at the Donahue Institute. Also, I think worth recognizing as a significant member of the team is Amanda Hoped, who has just joined their team, I believe 3 or 4 months ago, and has been an incredible contribution to their team and doing great work. So the research findings will be essential in developing a strategy to minimize gambling-related harm and bring the greatest possible benefit to the people of the Commonwealth. The findings will include the following: inform how monies from the Public Health Trust Fund, Section 58, will be expended, assist in assessing community-level impacts and inform decisions about expenditures from the Community Mitigation Fund. It's been discussed numerous times within the commission meetings. Improving problem gambling prevention, advancing the quality and effectiveness and efficiency of treatment of gambling disorders, informing the ongoing Massachusetts Gaming Commission research agenda, providing both qualitative and quantitative assessments of a broad range of impacts of expanded gambling, and finally, providing all the stakeholders in Massachusetts with a neutral database for strategic analysis and decision-making. So I'm going to go through each of the components of the SIGMA project and then give you an update on the activities to date. So the first research component, SIGMA will establish a baseline level of social and economic variables and their interrelationships before casinos become operative in Massachusetts. There are 34 different social measures, 20 different economic measures, with some of the traffic and crime indices still to be determined. So our activities to date in this area, the SIGMA has created a detailed matrix of measures to be collected, tracked, and monitored over time. They established coordinated data collection methods, which include the development of a shared database, so data and documentation from both the social team and the economic team at the Donahue Institute can be fed into the one central data management center. The social and economic teams have begun collecting secondary data across measures in the data matrix and organizing that data for integration into the data management system. The second research component, SIGMA will establish current prevalence of gambling in Massachusetts. This is a big one. What we will find are the demographic, game type, geospatial pattern of gambling in Massachusetts. What is the current prevalence of problem gambling in Massachusetts? The demographic, game type, and geospatial pattern of problem gambling in Massachusetts. Social, health, and economic consequences of problem gambling. Number of persons with gambling disorders that desire treatment and the number who actually seek treatment. Where problem gamblers, persons with gambling disorders go to receive treatment in Massachusetts, and barriers to seeking treatment. Activities to date, we have the baseline population survey, which is a sample size of 10,000. It's being conducted by NORC. The questionnaire has been finalized, and it's aligned with both the American Community Survey as well as the Massachusetts BRFSS, Brief Risk Surveillance System. So the purpose of aligning with those two is making sure that the questions that we have within our survey align with the questions in there, is that we get a broader, more power to do interpretation of the data. The questionnaire has been translated and programmed for the web, for the self-administered questionnaire, the computer-administered telephone interview. It's gone through both the UMass as well as the NORC IRB, Institutional Review Board, approval process, and approval was obtained. This started in September 11th of 2013. So far, we are at 70% complete, or 7,000 completes out of the 10,000. It's expected that data collection process for this sample will be completed sometime in May.
For the full 10,000
For the
by
full,
May?
For the full 10,000. We also have an online panel survey of a sample size of 5,000. This is conducted by Ipsos, which is a web survey company. The questionnaire has been programmed. We've received IRB approval. Fieldworks began on October 2013. So far, we're 80% complete with this survey, or 4,000 completes.
And there, I take it the two are separate?
The two are separate, yeah, with separate functions. The 10,000 general population survey tends to do a better job of obtaining information from the general population in Massachusetts. The 5,000 online survey tends to do a better job of gathering information, more specific, tends to gather more persons with gambling problems or gambling symptomology, problem gambling symptomology. And so we can gather a different type of data from that specific survey.
But somebody who was, somebody who had provided the individual data for the 10,000 would not accidentally get a internet survey as well?
It would be very, very, very unlikely that there would be an overlap between those two surveys.
It's fascinating how you structure that.
The third survey that we have is the targeted sample, and so this would be a targeted sample of individuals from the host and surrounding communities. So we have identified Plainville, and so that sample and study will be conducted by NORC. The geographic boundaries are obviously established, and we expect the field work for that area to begin shortly. Again, actually a similar question came up of how do you assure that there isn't overlap, and it's a very similar answer, that it would be very, very unlikely that there would be any overlap between those two.
And the sample area for the targeted sample is not just, in the case of Plainville, not just Plainville. It includes certain surrounding communities, correct?
It includes the surrounding communities that we had identified. So Rentham, Foxborough, Mansfield, Attleboro, and North Attleboro. Okay. The final research component, Sigma will create an inventory and provide a better understanding of problem gambling prevention and treatment services currently in Massachusetts. And this includes public awareness of existing problem gambling prevention initiatives and an evaluation of how well problem gambling prevention and treatment services match up to best practices. There is some overlap between this component and the previous component, where we are trying to get a sense of who are problem gamblers in Massachusetts. Are they accessing treatment? Are they not accessing treatment? And what comes back to what are the barriers preventing people from accessing treatment, which is one of the things that we're trying to figure out. So these two pieces work together. But other activities to date for this final research component include, there's an MOU that's been established with the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling and guidelines for sharing, reviewing, analyzing the helpline data. UMass IRB has been obtained, and they're creating the evaluation plan and protocol for treatment services and assessments. There's another piece to this that wasn't included in the initial research plan submitted by Sigma, but has kind of boiled up to the surface as being important, and that's taking a look at both crime and traffic data coming from our host and surrounding communities, as well as statewide. So we have added this in, and we are at this point meeting with state police as well as MGC consultants regarding obtaining crime data, not just crime data, but the crime data that really matters and really can be an indicator of what is the impact of expanded gaming in a specific region or a specific area. We're working with Commissioner Cameron on that, as well as other consultants. The other piece is understanding traffic, and so we've had meetings with Mass DOT to scope out the available data, sources, as well as an analysis plan. So using what is the secondary data that we can use at this point, what is our plan to measure that over time to really get a true understanding of the impact of expanded gaming on traffic issues.
I don't think you mentioned the cohort study.
We have not, I did not mention the cohort study, but I can. So right now we are in the process of procuring a cohort study. We put out an RFP to a limited pool to UMass Amherst as well as Division on Addiction back in November. The reason that we limited it to those two applicants is because they both have significant efforts underway, significant efficiencies if they were the selected applicant to conduct it. So we limited it to those two. We received their proposals back in December. There wasn't a clear winner that we would select, so we redefined the RFP, narrowed it, provided budget guidelines to the two applicants, and asked them to resubmit a bid. We have both applications in at this point, and they are out for review with an anticipated award date of on or before April 1st. This is the next, if you think about the ongoing research agenda, I'd like to describe the work that Sigma is doing right now, as well as this cohort study as kind of the cornerstones of the research agenda. But certainly there will be ongoing additional research studies, but these would be two ongoing research studies that will profoundly impact how we move forward and respond to issues that would arise.
Great.
Yeah, it's great. It's a
Thank
great
you.
foundation for
Excellent.
this.
Yeah, it is. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I just want to say how I've appreciated the Sigma team. They have been very forward-thinking. They've been able to respond to emerging issues, to the changing timelines, to the needs of the commission, to the needs of the communities, and have been nothing but a pleasure to work with.
Great.
Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you very much.
That's it.
Great. Thanks, Mark. That
Thank
was
you.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
I think we're going to do workforce development and diversity next. I kept forgetting one thing I meant to bring up during General Counsel Blue's report. We've talked about having a discussion about processes and standards for all the FOIAs that are a part of our lives now. And I just wanted at some point, I think we ought to have a discussion on how we do that, and I think it's sort of been on your plate to bring that up, but I just wanted to make sure that at some point, sometime pretty soon, we talk about that.
We have had that discussion at the staff level and have implemented a process, so we can certainly share it with the commission and have a conversation about it.
Okay. Because everybody knows this is a big job for us a lot of the time, with a lot of resources being required, and in some cases, particularly by people like General Counsel Blue, incredible amount of time. And there's some issues there that I want us to think about. So,
Right.
So whenever you can put that on the agenda, that would be great. Okay, we're now item number 7, Workforce Development and Diversity. Jill Griffin, Director.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
I'm here to update you on the Clean Energy Fair that took place on February 2nd. In your books is a copy of the program to give you a flavor of the types of companies that attended the fair. But as you know, Chapter 23K, the legislation, under Chapter 23K, the casino facilities must meet certain energy and sustainability targets, including a LEED Gold designation, for example. The introduction of these large facilities with considerable energy, water, and waste impacts creates an exciting new opportunity for Massachusetts-based clean energy companies to deploy their carbon-reducing and money-saving technologies. So on February 2nd, with the help of the Clean Energy Center, we co-hosted this networking expo at Bentley University to help facilitate connections between the clean tech companies and casino facility developers, the applicants. I want to report there was 100% participation from both Category 1 and Category 2 applicants, with applicants, facility developers, building and site design teams in attendance to meet with close to 40 clean energy companies from across the state. In fact, our new licensee took this very seriously, sending over 10 representatives to the event, including their contractor, Turner Construction. Participating clean tech companies included a mix of renewable energy, energy efficiency, waste management, transportation, and water innovation ventures. Presented developers with a variety of technologies and services that could easily improve facility operations and reduce energy and water consumption. The companies, as you can see in your program, came from Holyoke, Cambridge, Duxbury, Brighton, Hopkinton, Marlborough. They came from all over the state. Had interesting technologies that included a solar-powered cell phone charger or solar parking structures, and just very interesting. The connections made between the companies, as I went around and talked with them, they found the day to be extremely valuable. And I have just a brief couple of words from Galen Nelson from the Clean Energy Center. He writes, unfortunately there's a clean energy big event going on right now, so he couldn't make it today, but he writes, by setting high standards for energy and sustainability in gaming facilities, Massachusetts will lead the way in developing gaming facilities that are among the highest performing in the world, while also opening up new markets and economic opportunities for Massachusetts clean energy companies, adding to the nearly 80,000 jobs already in the clean tech industry here in the Commonwealth. So I'd just like to end by thanking the Clean Tech Center for their assistance and partnership. This event came off wonderfully by account of both the applicants and the companies. So.
Sounds great.
It does. It's terrific. I'm really pleased.
Who else was there, Joe, besides the applicant? I mean, these are all the vendors, but who else was in attendance? Who else came?
There were a number of architects and, industry folks who came. I had to be honest, the real excitement was focused on the applicants. But there were others who attended as well.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, that's great. Some really interesting things that companies are doing, aren't there?
Right.
Yeah.
And truly, it's the cutting edge technologies. I mean, someday we'll see this all over the place, but it was really eye-opening to see some of the products that were displayed. So.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
Kudos to Commissioner Stebbins for keeping pushing this as well as other balls along.
No, it's great. Yep.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So I'm also here to talk about the diversity commitments focused on Penn National, our new licensee. And I wanted to just take a few minutes and talk both about their history of diversity and also about the commitments they've made and the work they will do as part of the licensing conditions as well moving forward. So as part of their RFA2 application, Penn National has submitted a preliminary diversity plan for Plain Ridge Park Casino, which outlines their commitment to ensuring diversity in the construction and fit out of the property, procurement, contracting, operations, and community relations. The plan outlines a strategy to include a liaison with the Mass Supplier Diversity Office, the Greater New England Minority Supplier, liaison with veteran services organizations to seek veteran business enterprises and veteran workers. They also outline strategies that include selection of third-party in-house construction managers who share their commitment to diversity and inclusion, utilization of diversity consultants with a knowledge of the local construction market. In their application, they include information about their memorandum of understanding with the Mass Community College Career Training Institute on training and staffing needs to meet their goal of hiring. And in their application, they outline a goal of hiring 90% locally, which apparently I interpret to mean beyond their host community and including the surrounding communities as well. Their intent, they outlined in the application, was to create new career opportunities for the unemployed and underemployed in Massachusetts. Additionally, they have committed during the design and construction of the facility, they have included goals, hiring goals that mirror the Executive Office of Administration and Finance Administration Bulletin 14, which highlights the labor participation goals during the design and construction for laborers. Those goals in Bulletin 14 suggest minority hiring at 15.3%, women at 6.9%. So Penn commits to equal or exceed these goals. And based on some of their past experience, it appears that they're fairly committed in this area. So conditions of the license include or require that they have 30 days to submit a marketing plan that focuses on the design and construction of the project. So they will need to submit additional information about their hiring goals during design and construction. And then they have 90 days to submit a plan that focuses on the operations of the casino. So, but I wanted to just highlight brief.
And that includes minority employment commitments? Is that why you're saying that?
Yes, they're requirements under Chapter 23K in Section 15 talk about the licensee being required to submit or to identify on their own specific goals related to the total dollar amount of contracts for businesses during the design, construction, and the operations of the project. Additionally, under Section 15, they will be required to submit an affirmative action program of equal opportunity where the applicant establishes specific goals for the utilization of minorities, women, and veteran on construction jobs. So this is the reference to Administrative Bulletin 14 regarding during the construction.
So there aren't any as yet commitments to either provider, supplier, or employment targets. Is that correct? Somehow that got by me that
So there are commitments, but not specific goals. So I would say their application and the attachments to the application outline some very good strategies to reaching some high goals. However, they have not yet submitted some specific targets in certain areas.
But it's clear that they will?
It is clear, and it's a condition of the license.
Okay.
Some of their requirements only because the statute didn't set timetables for when they needed to come up with these affirmative marketing plans. When we wrote up the license conditions, we said within 30 days to at least show us how they're going to reach out to MBEs, WBEs, and VBEs. For design and construction, we gave them a little longer window with respect to plans to reach out to those three types of businesses for the operational phase. But we definitely wanted to get something in the door pretty quick with respect to those populations for the design and construction piece.
But is the commitment only to give us an outreach plan, or is the commitment to give us targeted numbers that they will achieve?
I think the broad term is an outreach plan or affirmative marketing plan, I think is what we call
The
it.
affirmative marketing plan is defined in the legislation, and I believe it requires targets, so.
It does require.
Weren't there any goals in the application materials?
There were goals that targeted during the construction and the hiring of laborers during the construction of the facility.
And we doesn't the boilerplate in the general language require them to fulfill the commitments they made or the goals they stated in the application?
That's
it did.
correct, but I think the legislation talks about setting goals during the operation of the facility as
Right,
well.
right.
Setting their own targets.
Right, and that isn't in there
Not that I could see.
in the application materials? I thought it was.
Well,
Okay.
That's why I'm bringing it up, because I
Right.
said, I think this somehow got by me. But I want to make sure we don't,
Right.
that we don't do this in the category ones, that I think what we're looking for is commitments that say we will have such and such a percentage of our vendors doing,
Right.
yeah, right. Not just a warm and fuzzy, we're going to have an outreach program. That's not what we're looking for.
Right.
And I somehow
Well,
slipped through.
I think, to be honest, I think their plan goes way beyond, we're going to have an outreach program. They outline very specific goals or very specific strategies for both outreach to businesses, minority, women, and veteran businesses, and employment. And they have consistently been recognized in their other jurisdictions by the National Black Chamber of Commerce and, the NAACP in Columbus, and they were awarded the Corporate Champion of Diversity, and, so.
They've got a track record.
I agree with that. Both they and Cordish had impressive track records and impressive policies.
Right.
But that's still different from,
Yes.
a stake in the ground that says, this is what I'm going to perform and I expect to be held to. And that step is a step we need to make sure still happens.
Right. And I would just add, in their other jurisdictions, as you know, they exceeded their hiring goals and their goals regarding use of local and minority and oftentimes veteran and women businesses well exceeded their goals. So quite impressive, actually. And I would add that Penn National has accepted the Commission's invitation to join the, or to meet with the vendor advisory team on the 24th of this month.
Great.
So Commissioner Stebbins and I will be meeting with both Penn National and their contractor, Turner Construction. So we'll be talking
Great.
more about these goals.
Great.
Jill, do you want to mention the meeting you organized yesterday as well?
Oh, yeah, we had, we've been busy. Yesterday, we had individuals from the Massachusetts Community College Career Training Institute. Did I get that right? We had the career centers from around the Plainville area, the workforce investment boards, and the regional employment boards. And yesterday, we were and additionally, Jennifer James from the Department of Labor and Alice Sweeney, who's director of the career centers. And really strategizing about the needs of the new licensee, future outreach. You know, Alice Sweeney, director of the Career Center, was indicating that they have access to LTUs. This is a new term that I learned, long-term unemployed individuals.
Great.
And, you know, the interest in targeting those individuals for opportunities at the Career Center was really interesting. And we also talked about the construction period and the use of pre-apprenticeship programs to target employment. So we will be working with the community colleges and the career organizations to put together community briefings and industry workforce awareness briefings in the next 21 days, and they'll run over the next 2 months. The Community College Training Institute will be collaborating to complete a hospitality industry workforce needs assessment with local employers in the next 45 days. And we're going to re-release our updated frequently asked questions about careers in gaming. So.
We had David and Todd also join us yesterday to walk through all these groups with respect to our applications, disqualifiers, so as they begin to get questions,
Right, that was
they can direct
very
people to
valuable.
what application they're going to fill out. If their record is X, they probably shouldn't apply, or they can apply, but they appreciated having a chance to see the information and begin to get a feel for who's going to be eligible.
Right, so they actually saw the licensing applications and heard about and got an opportunity to ask questions from Director Acosta and heard all about the licensing and regulations and the statute, so,
Great.
yeah.
Great. Anything else for Director Griffin?
No, that's really good report.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great work.
Another really good
Yes.
report, yeah.
I have been waiting anxiously for Director Durenberger's report all morning, but unfortunately, I have a doctor's appointment. Oh, no. All day. So rather than break out in the middle of you, I'm going to,
Yeah, I have a commitment as well. I
Pass on.
apologize, so I'm going to have to leave as well.
but we will leave you with a quorum, and hopefully you'll drop by my office tomorrow and give me an update on what I missed. Excuse me.
Missed it.
Commissioner McHugh, I may be a while, so I don't know if you want a brief recess, or should we start right in?
Yes, let's start right in and see if we can't move through this with customary dispatch. So,
With the three
Let's
of us,
begin.
we may do some other things to take over the commission.
Right.
We'll get through the horse racing stuff.
all right.
I just need 1 minute. I'm just going to
Oh,
refresh
all
my
right.
cup.
No, let's take a 5-minute break then.
Okay, thank you.
We're back and ready to proceed with, oops, we're not ready to back and proceed. The important ingredient is,
We thought we were important.
we thought we were important, but we look around and, sorry about that, Lori. All right, thank you. All right, Director Durenberger, we're prepared to proceed with the racing issue.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so we've got a fairly lengthy agenda. We'll fly through the first 2 items, and then we'll slow down for the second 2 items. The first item would be approval of the 2012 unclaimed wagers. In the industry parlance, they are outs, outstanding tickets. These are the wagers that were never claimed from 2012. You'll recall that people who placed these wagers had about a calendar year to come forward and make claims, so this is what remained. This is the aggregate balance. The numbers due from each licensee appear on page 2 in that memo. In the case of tickets that were generated at the running horse and harness horse licensee, those monies are payable to the purse account at that association. In the case of tickets generated on simulcast wagering at the Greyhound licensee facilities, those monies go to the Racing Stabilization Fund. The parties are all in agreement on these numbers, and so I would just ask that the Commission vote to approve that these monies are payable to the Commission by March 31st, 2014. The process then is the Commission then turns around and deposits them into the appropriate accounts.
All right, is there a motion to that, is there a motion to that effect?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have, aye. The ayes have it unanimously. Okay.
Thank you. The second item on the agenda is approval of so-called special events to be simulcast at Raynham Park in 2014. Our statute requires that folks that are simulcasting one type of, one breed of racing have to pay premium to the licensee that hosts that breed's racing on simulcast events. So ordinarily, Raynham Park, every time it simulcasts a thoroughbred signal, a running horse signal from another jurisdiction, owes Suffolk Downs a premium, a percentage premium, but the statute enables them to simulcast 15 so-called special events each year. The special event request letter is in your packet. They've requested this year, as in years past, the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness Stakes, the Belmont Stakes, and 12 of the Breeders' Cup races, which are typically offered over a 2-day period late in the year. And it's my recommendation that these special events be approved.
I move that the commission approve the list of 2014 special events to be simulcast at Raynham Park.
Second?
Yeah, there's a second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it.
Thank you. Turning to item 3, this is a revisitation of a proposed extension to our existing simulcast and parimutuel laws. We last saw this issue at the meeting on January 23rd. At that meeting, there was a potential inconsistency which Commissioner McHugh highlighted for us to take a closer look at between requirements for live racing found in Chapter 128C and Chapter 23K. The legal department did look at this issue, came up with some proposed options, proposed solutions to this potential inconsistency. We did incorporate that into the language that's in your packet, but I'd like to just step back for a second and say that my recommendation at this time is that the Commission move forward with the first 2 sections of this legislation only. So these are the sections, they're in front of you. Section 1 is the section which would extend the repeal date of the existing chapters by 2 years. Section 2 is the provision that would extend the rights of the current Greyhound simulcast licensees to continue simulcasting for a period of 2 years. And then Section 3 is the piece that addressed the number of live racing days required in order to conduct simulcasting. That's found in Chapter 128C, Section 2, and we don't have consensus on that issue at this time. So my recommendation is to move forward with the first two. I would say that just as the legislature can be of mixed mind on important matters, and you all can be of mixed mind on important matters, the Director of Racing is of mixed mind on this important matter. So I offer you this recommendation, but I also recognize that I have a dissenting opinion as well. But I think that's the safest, soundest strategy moving forward. But I'm very happy to have a discussion.
You have a dissenting opinion from...
Of my own.
Pardon me?
Of my own.
Oh. Okay, so you're recommending that we postpone for 2 years the provisions of the Gaming Act that affect what precisely? I should know this.
Sure.
128A, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, Section 112, which appeared in Chapter 194, it's not in Chapter 23
Right,
case, so
I
it
just
was in
don't
that
have-
piece.
Yeah,
Has a provision which repeals Chapters 128A and C
right.
on July
right,
31st,
right, okay.
2014.
I got it. And I got it. So we're just delaying the repeal of those sections for 2 years.
Correct.
We're asking the legislature to
Correct.
delay.
That's
That's
it.
the
We're
proposal.
asking
Right.
them to,
Right.
yeah.
Right, okay. And that will give us more time to think through some of the other issues that attend this, and also time to finish the licensing and see who licensees are, and also give time to go forward with construction that's going to interrupt racing or potentially have an impact on racing in any event. All of those reasons counsel in favor of this, right?
It will do all of those things. It will also get the industry out past the time that monies start being generated into the Racehorse Development Fund
Right.
as well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was why we had looked at that Section 3 as well, for all of those uncertainties and
Right,
the numbers and the deadlines that are kind of shifting.
right, right, okay.
Yeah, that's key. The Racehorse Development Fund really kicks in, no pun intended, on, after money
Right.
start really flowing.
Right,
So,
right, okay. Discussions, questions? All right, motion?
I would move that this commission forward to the legislature recommendations relative to extension of the chapters 128A and C as outlined in the memo here, labeled sections 1 and section 2.
Second.
This will go to the legislature with a little memo explaining and some discussion as, on a one-on-one basis as to why we need this.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Great, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it.
Thank you. And the last agenda item, some emergency regulations changes that we propose, which would affect 205 CMR 3 and 4. There's a packet in front of you. There are a couple of changes appearing in 205 CMR 3.09 and 3.11, which are unique to harness racing. The rest of them parallel the same for both the breeds, both the harness racing and the running horse licensee. I will tell you that we've received today an unprecedented amount of written and telephonic communication from our stakeholders regarding one particular provision. So, knowing that they're the same in the two chapters, I'll have you turn to 205 CMR 3.184, subsection E as in echo. This appears in new regulation regarding conflicts of interest between racing officials who are officiating the races, the pari-mutuel races, and participants, occupational licensees. The racing division, just to echo something that Director Day said so eloquently earlier today, we in keeping with the Commission's mission, are really committed to a participatory process. To the extent that these proposed regulations affected the operators and the officials that they employ, we did send out drafts to each of our licensees and proposed licensees on February 21st. That submission included language from us.
What date was that?
On February 21st.
Okay.
That submission, we included language in that about our commitment to the participatory process, and that we believe that the industry, having an industry that's committed to working together to create sensible and enforceable regulation is most desirable. We did receive feedback from one of the licensees. We did incorporate certain revisions at their suggestion in response. What I would like to do, if it's all right with Commissioner McHugh, is I'd like to read into the record one of the emails received this morning, because I think it will give you a flavor of some of the issues that we're trying to address, as well as some of the concerns that the stakeholders are expressing today. And then I would follow that up with my go-forward suggestion in the face of what have been some pretty strident comments received at the late hour. So if that's with Commissioner McHugh's permission. Okay, this was received from the Harness Horsemen's Association of New England. This is an association that represents the occupational licensees in harness racing, primarily owners, drivers, and trainers. And I'll read this into the record. This is from their secretary, Mr. Steve Quinn. At the most recent Board of Directors meeting of the HHANE, it was brought out that the Commission was reviewing its policy, allowing family members to compete against each other in parimutuel races. It was also brought to our attention that certain individuals who cohabitate had to make a decision to either train horses or work for the track on part of their officiating team. Before decisions are made, the board would like to fully participate in the process. In the 1970s, a similar decision was made by the Massachusetts Racing Commission, barring family members from competing against each other. This decision affected many in the racing community, and then they give a list of names. After much frustration and hearings, it was determined that each worked as a separate entity and were permitted to race against each other again. The same would hold true when decisions are made about conflicts between, and then they enumerate the racing officials. Before people's livelihoods are shattered, each should be reviewed separately to be assured that there are no conflicts. I am aware that in Massachusetts, an assumption of conflict is a conflict. I'm sure when these positions are reviewed and how they affect racing, it will show that they are not and will not be in conflict. We have been racing in Plainville for over 11 years without a problem. The people who hold these positions help the industry along with trying to make a living. These are the folks who are trying to help get back on their feet. The board is going to get more active and request many changes to make things more transparent. Many of the current practices are assumed to be in conflict. We are going to request a different format for the draw, which is when horses are entered to race, making it more visual to all. We want the classes set up so it doesn't look like it was written for certain individuals. Purses for different classes will be established and claiming prices will be set. We need to work with the judges to make the rules that we have work and remove the doubt of bad races. The board met yesterday. We plan on meeting weekly. If needed, we will come to Boston to resolve differences. We are all interested in putting on the best show possible for the racing public. Know that there are many individuals offering advice, and it's not wrong. However, decisions made by a group are usually better. The board of directors, as a group, should be the only voice for the best interest of harness racing. And that's signed by the secretary, Mr. Steve Quinn of HHANE. So I think that gives you a flavor of the issues that we're trying to address. I will say that I'll say a few things. First is that we are reviewing policies regarding family members competing against each other, but that there's nothing in this packet that touches that. What's in here, what's proposed, they squarely address the issue of racing and operating officials officiating races in which they have a potential financial impact or a financial interest in the outcome. So this proposed environment is stricter than that prescribed by the model rules. I will admit that. We don't think that these proposals, however, unfairly burden the racing officials. Their duty, racing officials' duty under the model rules, are to protect the interests of the betting public. Different states handle this differently. I worked in one state, actually, where regulations similar to this were struck as being void against public policy because they encourage divorce. I've worked in
I'm
other
sorry,
states.
what regulation like your proposed E
Yes,
was struck as void against public policy?
that was my understanding, yes.
Well, okay.
Another state, another type of regulatory approach. Other states have different approaches, and there's not a model rule that addresses this. But these are big deals, and they will affect people in significant ways. So I think my go-forward strategy, since these were intended to be adopted as emergency regulations, there's no difference in effect if we adopt them now, if we vote to adopt them now, if we adopt them in 2 weeks. So it may make sense, given the vociferousness of some of the comments that we've received, to put them out for informal public comment and come back to you with the package on the 20th. I really do think, I get back to something I talk about publicly a lot, which is the racing's winning trifecta. And the 3 stools of that trifecta, number 1 are safety initiatives, number 2 are sensible regulations, and number 3 is a commitment to aftercare. So this falls right with that second prong, the sensible regulation. And so if these regulations are not sensible, if they're too vague, if the language is too all-encompassing, there's a couple ways. Perhaps we change the language in the regs, perhaps we draft some directives to provide clarification or a brighter line, but it certainly seems to me that there's no difference in effect if we do that today or if we do that in 2 weeks.
Well, okay, any comment? Any thoughts?
Well, I'm generally in favor of studying the matter a little bit more, because although we forwarded to stakeholders on February 21st, and there may have been enough time for them to look at things. The practical matter is that they may not have until very recently for a whole host of reasons, and it's important to look at the comment. The essence of the comment is more important rather than the timing. I was actually wondering about whether, well, since we're going to be thinking about it a little bit more, I'm wondering whether the size of the industry at this juncture is one where this is very much a reality, or and not just a perceived affecting a number of people, and that could change given our recent decision in the future. So on account of that, I'd say it's fine, at least from my perspective, to get a couple, to wait a few more days to get more informed decision. However, having said all that, I do think that what you put forward here, is very sensible, at least as drafted here. That somebody officiating a race in which it could be perceived that they have a financial interest in the outcome is very likely a conflict of interest.
It's bizarre.
Yes. It could be a direct conflict, but even if it is under our conflict of interest laws, even the perception of a conflict needs to be, addressed or cured or disclosed. And I couldn't imagine exactly how that would work in this setting, disclosing where and to whom and when that the official, is a sister-in-law of the owner of certain horse. So, anyway, in the balance, I'd say it's fine to wait a little bit, but I think your first draft here was very sensible.
I had, before commenting, a question about 318, or 3.18, 1 and 2. Are those people who are listed there, are they employees of the commission or employees of the track or something in between?
So 318.1 and 2, and there's a parallel provision in the running horse regs. In Category 1, the racing officials, the vast majority of them are employed by the association. The commission employs 2 of the 3 judges, and they employ the official veterinarian. The rest are employed by the association. And provision number 1 in this rule is model rule language taken right from the Racing Commissioners International. Section 2, operating officials, is a new provision. This does not appear in the model rules. And this is our attempt to address a background check gap, an organizational gap. So in other words, the officers of the companies, of the entities, were subject to background checks that were very in-depth. And then our racing officials, which appear in provision 1, are subject to a much more cursory background level background check. This group of individuals has the ability to direct, manage, or control racing operations, or they supervise those folks and had never been subject to background check. So we put this forward back in October, actually, and discussed with our racing license applicants that this would be coming down the pike so that they had some notice of that.
Okay, so in the case of our one, in the case of our thoroughbred licensee and our now gaming licensee, the 2 group would have to go through another background check to the extent that the existing one, go through a background check to the extent that the existing one is insufficient. But they're employed by the operator.
They are employed by the operator, and these positions were not required to go through a background check as part of the gaming process on the one applicant side, and they have never been on the racing side.
Okay. And if we can postpone this for 2 weeks, is there going to be enough time to do that before the meet opens in mid-April?
So the intent was to adopt these as emergency regs and then start the regular rulemaking process in parallel. So if we come back to you on the 20th...
No, I'm sorry, I was imprecise. Will there be enough time to get the background checks done if we adopt these as emergency regs in 2 weeks?
On the operating officials. It'll be close. We can probably come to you with a recommendation to approve them pending successful completion of the background checks.
All right. Because I too think that we ought to take a little bit more time with that and get a couple more weeks of public comment, particularly from, have we gotten from the racing licensees, have we gotten comments from them? They were part of the stakeholder group from whom we solicited comments.
So one of our racing licensees did submit some written suggestions, and a conference call was had, and we incorporated some of their changes that we thought were very reasonable. The other gave me a phone call this morning, and so we're going to encourage them to submit something in writing as well.
Okay. Well, I would like to hear some more detail of those comments. Given the controversial nature of E, apparently, it seems to me we ought to have the 5 commissioners here so we can have a full discussion. And I would also like to see any additional comments that come in between now and the 20th, if we do decide to postpone it. And I also would like to see whatever case it was that held that section void as against public policy. I'm having a little bit of trouble figuring out on its face how the ban, as opposed to the practice, should be void as to public policy, as against public policy. So I would very much like to see that case. Maybe I take it we haven't looked at it.
It was in another state.
Pardon me?
It's from another state.
Yeah, I know, but
so,
sometimes they do things in other states that make sense too.
well, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
but it may take me a little bit more to find it.
Right, and particularly if there's an opinion that goes with it. It explains why
Yeah.
why that provision is void. So I'd like to see that. There's one other, do either of you have any other? The other thing that jumped out at me in these regs that I wanted to ask you about, and maybe we could address again the next time, is why the prospective licensees should be required to bear the cost of fingerprinting. Some of these jobs are really low-paying, back-of-the-track jobs, right?
Correct. It's the practice in every jurisdiction that I know of on the racing side. Our chief parimutuel officer has compiled a list, so I can go back and double-check that. I will say that it's industry standard to not be printed every year. Every 3 years is industry standard. And I believe, just thinking out loud about this, is it's probably just a source of resources for the other commissions that have these. So in other words, for the commission to bear the cost, that would be a significant cost of all. We have 3,200 occupational licensees on the racing side, so that'd be 3,200 times $30-something. And so it may be a cost issue, but it has been the case every jurisdiction that I'm familiar with that the licensee bears the cost.
Well, could we get, for that discussion,
Certainly.
an economic impact analysis?
Certainly.
Because some of these folks are I'm afraid, are making subsistence wages now, and to impose another cost of that on them, and maybe that's the best way to go, but at least that's a factor that I'd like to know more about before we vote on that.
Certainly, and I think we have a bit of time on that as well, in that we put this provision in because it was our understanding somewhere this summer we would have the capability of printing folks, but we're certainly not in a position to
Right.
begin that right now. So.
Right, okay, great. So do we have a consensus then that we should postpone this discussion until March 20th and come back and reassess it with the additional information
Yes,
we've
that-
just
yes.
discussed? Yeah.
Commissioner McHugh and Director Dernberg, is the plan to bring them back as emergency regulations still, or move them forward as part of the formal process?
Well, some of this you want to have in place by mid-April, right? I mean, that conflict of interest regulation, if it's a good idea, we ought to do that, certainly. So, emergency regulations, I think,
Thank you.
on that parallel track where we do the emergency regulations as well as start the process for the permanent regulation. All right? Okay, let's do it that way then.
Okay, we can certainly do that, and we'll work on those action items, and that concludes the racing report.
Great. Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes the agenda for the day. If my reading is correct. Is everybody in agreement with that reading?
Yes, and I move that we adjourn.
Before we have to, anybody has a second thought? There's a second for that? All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it unanimously, and we are adjourned. Thank you all.